Good morning, Kenya. It is the 8th day of April, the morning when we're waking up to former DP accusing President Ruto as being a master of doublespeak. This is the Morning Momentum, a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. Use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Alphonce Albakwekwe at Younib Media TV. Let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Gachagua'S fight back. Now, you are a liar. Impeached Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua yesterday launched a bare-knuckle pushback against President William Ruto's claims that he demanded 10 billion shillings to market the government's agenda in the Mount Kenya region. Instead, he made a raft of fresh allegations against his former boss, including that he has a secret recordings of a 2 billion retirement package offered to him in exchange for his resignation ahead of his impeachment. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 8, Kuria's bid to stop property auction flops. President William Ruto's senior economic advisor Moses Kuria has failed in his bid to stop Equity Bank from auctioning his property in Kiambu over 54 million shillings debt. High Court Judge Alem Visram yesterday ruled that Mr. Kuria had failed to meet the threshold required to stop the public sale. Also on page 8, do you have a persistent flu? Watch out for outbreak of influenza A. On page 10, I thought I found Canaan only to land in hell. A Myanmar returnee's woes. We'll take a look at that. And on page 15 this morning, massacre or not, Governor unveils monument for 40 killed in Turkana. And that story is beefed up for you on page 15. On page 23 this morning, Ruto regime, quote-unquote, dodging responsibility, forcing Kenyans to finance its programs. We'll take a look at that on page 23. Let's get up close and candid with the Nation on page 2. Odundo takes the helm of Nation Media Group. CEO promises to accelerate the digital transformation agenda, and he took over from his predecessor Gitagama, who served in various capacities for 17 years. On page 3 this morning, National Drama and Film Festival begins. 63rd edition opens to a great start at Melvin Jones Lyons Junior School and Menengai High School. PSB Talk urges young people to make positive content on social media instead of feeding their accounts with negativity. That story is beefed up for you on page 3. Let's take a look at page 4. Gachagua fights off Ruto's claim. Now, the impeached deputy president says he regrets taking the president by his word on their pre-election agreements. In a TV interview last night, Mr. Gachagua accused the president of dishonesty regarding his removal from office. At a glance, here are the claims by the former deputy president. Number 1 is that President William Ruto offered him 2 billion shillings to resign as deputy president. The offer was made through a senior government official. The second claim is that President chose him as running mate in 2022 because of his people and resource mobilization skills, but is now creating a narrative that he is a blackmailer. The third claim is that the president is involved in business ventures with the Kosovo leader and is also meddling in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo, helping rebels to launder proceeds of illegal gold business. All right, let's delve a little bit into that. Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua yesterday launched a bare-knuckle pushback against President William Ruto's claims that he demanded 10 billion shillings to market the government's agenda in the Mount Kenya region, making a raft of fresh allegations against his former boss. The DP, who was ejected from office through impeachment in October last year, in a lengthy interview on KTN, claimed the president sent a senior government official as an emissary to offer him 2 billion shillings in exchange for his resignation, failing which he would face removal from office. I quote him, on the 10 billion shillings claims, the purpose was to show that Gachagua is a selfish man. I did not blackmail him, and if I did, it would have been charge number 1 in my impeachment motion because he's the one who crafted the motion assisted by National Intelligence Service, end of quote. So you'll catch up with that. Let's move on and take a look at page 5. Fresh twist to Rigathi chaos. Now, goons who had been arrested were released yesterday unconditionally, and 12 motorcycles returned to owners. 5 lawmakers allied to former DP have been summoned by police over the violence that rocked a church service on Sunday. At least 5 political allies of former DP have been summoned by police over violence in Amwiki Church on Sunday as PCA elders blamed security authorities for failing to prevent the chaos. The summonses were issued after initial investigations linked to Mr. Gachagua'S outrage to a group of individuals that violently interrupted a church service and fundraising event. The development comes after a blame game between supporters of Mr. Gachagua and Kenya Kwanza administration that accused each other of sponsoring the violence. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. Let's take a look at page 6. How 1.4 billion shillings Go TV stake has put Ruto PS nominee in trouble with MPs. National Assembly is this week expected to consider the committee's report on nominees' sustainability. Parliamentary committee says the appointment of Isaboke would be in conflict with his personal commercial interests. Now, a parliamentary committee wants President William Ruto's nomination of former MultiChoice Africa boss Stephen Isaboke as PS4 Broadcasting and Telecommunication halted, given his 1.4 billion shillings commercial interest in GoTV Kenya that is owned by MultiChoice Africa. In a memorandum to the National Assembly, the Public Investments Committee on Social Services Administration and Agriculture has drawn the attention of the House to the fact that appointment of Mr. Isaboke will be in conflict with his personal commercial interest, his being chairman with a 10% shareholding at GoTV Kenya. On page 7 this morning, Mudavadi president loyalty test and the shadows of a new party. Analysts say there will be a lot of political upheavals in the run-up to the 2027 poll. Prime CS battles links to a new political party amid Kenyans' growing disenchantment with the government. Prime CS Musalia Mudavadi has had a dizzying rise in the Kenya Kwanza administration, with his political influence steadily growing since the new regime came into power in 2022. The former vice president has turned into President William Ruto's Mr. Fix-It, benefiting from a rocky relationship between the president and his then deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, who has since been removed from office after impeachment by the parliament. On page 8 of the Nation this morning, Kuria loses bid to stop auction after defaulting on 54 million shillings loan. Justice Visram says Equity Bank had followed due process before going for the auction alternative. Presidential advisor had told the court he was unable to carry out development due to the COVID-19 pandemic after being admitted to hospital for a prolonged period. That story is beefed up for you on page 8. On page 9 this morning, Myanmar returnee, I thought I found Canaan only to land in hell. The victim explains that they were given targets and tortured if they did not meet them. Kenyans advised to check the validity of jobs being advertised by various agencies with the diaspora office. At a glance, Dan's experience in Myanmar is that Dan left Nairobi after he was told there was an opportunity in Thailand where he could teach English language. This is after he paid an agency 200,000 shillings for the opportunity. He says, and I quote, "When I landed in Myanmar, I was picked up by a big car like the one government people are driven in. I thought I had found my Canaan, but ended up in hell." He said that the area listed that all was not well after they were driven for almost 8 hours at high speeds without stopping. He proceeds to say, "Once we crossed a river, I knew that I was done." He admits that the biggest mistake he did was to trust the agency and leave the country without first obtaining a work visa. He swears that the agency duped him will pay. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. 78 is the total number of Kenyans who arrived at the JKIA on Saturday after they were rescued from the Myanmar scam camps. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. On page 12 this morning, Muturi dragged into 1.2 billion shillings KPA tender fight. Now, raw stems from agreement to remove asbestos material at Kenya Ports Authority premises. The Attorney General advised that the variation of the contract to reflect the prevailing market price was legal and allowable. At a glance, Battles goes to the Court of Appeal. Now, according to court papers, Mr. Muturi, in a letter dated July 13, 2023, advised that the variation of the contract to reflect the prevailing market price was legal and allowable. The contractor and KPA are embroiled in a legal dispute at the Court of Appeal in Nairobi over amendment of the contract terms as recommended by Mr. Muturi in the legal advisory. KPA is adamant that adopting the AG's recommendation would lead to loss of money, but the contractor counters that. That story is augmented for you on page 12. On page 13 this morning, County appeals award of land to Ntutu's brother. Narok County contends that the land is public trust land. Narok government was also ordered to pay Mr. Kunini revenue from earnings since 1997. Now, the Narok County government has appealed a High Court ruling that awarded a 4,720-acre parcel of land in the Masai Mara Game Reserve to Governor Patrick Ntutu's brother, Livingstone Kunini Ole Ntutu, sparking a fresh political and public interest. The county has also sought a stay of execution of the judgment, which also directed it to account for and pay Mr. Kunini revenue from tourism earnings on the land dating back to 1997. On page 14 this morning, forgive me, officer's last words before triple murderers and suicide. He left behind several suicide notes in his Kakdimu East house in Rachuonyo. Constable David Goga traveled to his Ouma Bay home about 3 weeks ago with a mission to end 4 lives. At a glance, police officer was at his Kagoga village home in Homa Bay County. David poisoned Triza Okebe, Hazard Okebe, and nephew Seth Odeka, all aged between 5 and 7 years. He also threatened to kill one of his bosses who had angered him, but later changed his mind. He wrote all this in a suicide note left behind in his house in Kakdimu East, Rachuonyo North. On Sunday, his body and those of his 2 children and nephew were discovered in his Kawiti house. Triza's and Hazard's bodies were found on a bed in the bedroom, but Seth's was in a chair. That story is beefed up for you on page 14. On page 15 this morning, plaque for 40 Todonyang raid victims unveiled, but CS disputes the number. Interior Minister Murkomen says the missing Kenyans should not be declared dead without evidence. Now, decent militiamen from Ethiopia are believed to be behind the deadly February 22nd attack. Only 3 bodies have been found since then. You'll catch up with that story on page 15. On the expert opinion this morning, world must unite against Trump. South Africa has been too patient. It will come to regret if it does not take very urgent steps to confront economic apartheid. That expert opinion is beefed up for you on page 17. Now, on the DN2 article, Powering SMEs this morning, it's about power up your phone here. The charging stations are placed in high traffic areas such as malls, airports, and bus railway stations, hospitals, and shopping centers. All that is beefed up for you on the DN2 Powering SMEs article. Let's move on and take a look at county news now on The Nation this morning. Why Nyakango has been drawn into county crisis. Now, divided assembly holds sittings at different places. We are talking about Nyamira political woes. Now, senators have questioned her role in the ongoing standoff that has led to a split in the county assembly. The power struggle, 2 factions that have emerged in the Nyamira County Assembly, each led by Speaker and Clerk. In Kajiado County, Lenku sidelines local road contractors and hires repair equipment. The Kajiado government is grappling with 2 billion pending bills even as it turns to a state department to rehabilitate its rural roads. The deaths are said to have affected service providers, with many blacklisting the county government following delayed payment despite assurances of settlement. That story is beefed up for you on page 20. On page 21, in Kisumu County, New Dawn, the changing skyline of Kisumu City. The iconic Lumumba estate, built in 1961, was demolished and modern buildings put up. The tall apartment buildings have now replaced the colonial bungalows that once dotted every corner of the lakeside city. In Siaya County, Siaya becomes a theater of impeachments. Now, Siaya County Assembly is turning into a theater of impeachments, with the latest victim being Governor James Orengo's trade minister, even as the House faces sharp criticism from civil society and women leaders. East Ugenya member of County Assembly, Frederick Omoro, is spearheading a fresh ouster motion against County Minister Grace Agola. The latest motion mirrors the impeachment of Deputy Governor William Oduol on June 8, 2023. However, he was saved by the Senate, but County Executive Committee member for Water, Dr. Julie Onyango, was not as lucky, as she was impeached in the same year. That story is beefed up for you on page 21. Now let's shift gears and take a look at the international scene. Trump's tariff medicine hammers global markets. Now, shares in Taiwan plummeted almost 10%, the biggest one-day percentage fall on record. Ministers in the European Union hold meeting in a bid to form a united front. Here are the fears. Business leaders' confidence is falling. Billionaire fund manager Bill Ackman, who endorsed Trump's run for president, called for the tariffs to be paused to avert an economic nuclear winter. The president is losing the confidence of business leaders around the globe, he added. Investors and political leaders have struggled to determine whether Trump's tariffs are part of a permanent new regime or a negotiating tactic to win concessions from other countries. Briefly, in Luanda, AU chair backs Togo president for mediation role. Angolan President João Lourenço, who currently serves as the acting chair of the African Union, has proposed Togo's President Faure as the AU mediator in the peace process between the DRC and Rwanda, according to a statement released by the Angolan presidency on social media. The proposal was made during the first meeting of the Bureau of the Assembly of the AU on the situation, convened by Lourenço the same day. You want to catch up with that story on page 22. Lastly, on the international scene, gunmen kill at least 52 people in Nigeria's Plateau state. Now, gunmen have killed at least 52 people and displaced nearly 2,000 others over several days of attacks in Nigeria's northern Plateau state, which has a history of violence between farmers and cattle herders, the National Emergency Agency has said. Now, let's take a look at the world of business. Ruto dodging responsibility in new levies, MP's budget office. Now, MPs say administration is forcing households to finance the projects. Projects in question are affordable housing, universal health, and university education. The new taxes, 4,320 shillings, is the maximum monthly NSSF deduction from a flat rate of 200 shillings, depending on the income level. Let's look at the digital sector. U.S. firms flag copyright violations online. U.S. firms have flagged copyright infringement in the digital space among the top barriers to trade and investment in Kenya, highlighting a key loophole that the government needs to plug as the country's digital acceleration gathers pace. That story is augmented for you on page 23. Let's take a quick look at sports news on the nation this morning. We start with secondary schools Term 1 national games. Now, the battle for national honors begins in Mombasa today. Teams to hold parade and march past Shanzu Teachers Training College this morning. More than 2,000 students from 8 regions across the country will battle for top honors in various disciplines over the next 5 days. Now, on page 35, Saka aims fire on Madrid as Ghana's chase a milestone. This is about the UEFA Champions League quarterfinals. Now, Arteta backs Arsenal to shine in first leg at Emirates. His importance to Arsenal is underlined by his statistics this season: 10 goals and 14 assists in 26 matches in all competitions. That story is beefed up for you on page 35. Also on page 35 this morning, Starlets Cote d'Ivoire clash in second friendly match. Kenya's Harambee Starlets play Cote d'Ivoire tonight in the second international friendly match inside 5 days from 9 p.m. at Felix Houphouët Boigny Stadium in Abidjan. Starlets lost to tonight's opponents 2-0 on Friday, and coach Beldin Odemba is keen to use tonight's match to assess the team's overall performance during the FIFA Women's International break, which ends tonight. On the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning, five chiefs taken by Shabab released, Murkomen says. A source alleges that a ransom was paid before they were freed. Released administrators said to be in the hands of Kenyan officials within Somalia. Now, the 5 chiefs abducted by the suspected Al-Shabaab militants in Mandera have been released after more than 60 days in captivity inside Somalia, the government has announced. Interior and National Coordination CS Kipchumba Murkomen yesterday said the administrators were in the hands of Kenyan authorities. Now, as we conclude, KEBS boss attracts MP's ire after she skips invite over 420 million shillings scandal. Now, the Kenya Bureau of Standards Managing Director Esther Ngari has angered MPs after she failed to appear before them despite confirming her availability to answer questions on claims that the government lost 420 million shillings in revenue through forgery and falsification of documents. The members of the National Assembly's Trade, Industry and Cooperative Committee summoned her to clarify the matter or face police action, even as they linked her no-show to political patronage from the individuals who do business with KEBS. Now, with that story of KEBS boss, we come to the tail end of today's session of the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much for keeping us company and for choosing to watch the best youth television network in East and Central Africa. We appreciate your support and we are very grateful. Our heartfelt gratitude also goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. The chief controller this morning has been Peninah Wachera. My name is Alphonce Ouma. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful day ahead of you.